Good morning all from a rather wet Djuma this morning. Had rain most of the night after a really nice rain yesterday afternoon, so we've had a long soaking rain, one of those really lovely rains that sinks in rather than causes a lot of runoff. Desperately needed. We've needed this for more than a month now. It's rather late, in fact. Well, not really. I suppose we can also expect rain go all the way into April. My name is Mark, and Brian and Scott on the other vehicle. Andrew's with me today on Wendy, and Scott and Brian will catch up with them later. Alex is back in final control, and well, we're going to see what we can find on a wet morning in Greater Kruger Park, Sabi Sands. It's a very, I don't know why I'm speaking so loud. It's almost like I'm going to wake up the world. It's a very quiet morning. A few drongos, a few bird calls, but certainly not the active dawn chorus that we're accustomed to when on a normal day or a weather-free day. So let's continue. We're on Zoe's Road. Let's head further south. And I was saying to Andrew when he left, somewhere there are cats walking on the road, because cats, well, they like today, going to be moving around. Grasses are going to be wet, so they're going to prefer to walk on roads, getting from A to E. Hope we can find one of them. Or the ellie dung. See if we can find whoever left that behind. A lovely long rain is great because it washes away all old tracks, so the roads it's a brand new surface, brand new chalkboard as it were. The rain only just stopped. We woke up this morning. An hour ago it was still coming down pretty hard, and while we were debating what we were going to do about the start of drive, we didn't have power. We thought the power was out as well. But everything resolved itself. The rain stopped, the power was on, and here we are. Lovely too. Would love to hear from you wherever you are on the planet. Questions at WildEarthTV. And let's hope that the weather holds for us. Question from Sean in Sydney, all the way across the planet. Good afternoon to you out there in Sydney. Do the drives still go out when it's raining? And I just picked up a stick. There we go. We can't really be out too much in the rain, Shauna, because the equipment on the vehicle, everything is relatively well exposed. And being quite large equipment, give me a moment there a sec. Go ahead, Scott. Rebecca's down to Fullerman's Dip. Are you still going to go to MPC? Okay, sounds good. So as far as the vehicle is concerned, we'll have to go to Scott. We're getting sort of the edge of... Yeah, so see you in a little bit. See what I can find in the meantime.
Good morning and welcome to the Sabi Sands. Myself and Brian have got lucky. We stumbled across some lion tracks. I've just seen what looks to be one lioness track. There could well be more. And it wasn't far from here that we found them. I'm just going to continue snooping around this area. We're just on the edge of the quarantine clearings, and there's what makes this area difficult to track in is that the lodge surroundings are very close to us. So I'm just trying to work out where these animals may have gone, or this animal may have gone. So bear with me. As I'm sure Mark said to you already, we've had a huge amount of rain in the last 4 hours. So really good news for this area, because it was very dry and the rain is much needed. So great news, and we've got lucky this morning because the rain hasn't affected the game drive. We were concerned about half an hour ago before we went live whether we'd actually be able to do a broadcast, because it was still raining quite hard then. Where have these tracks gone? Also, interestingly, with these tracks that we saw, it looked like they were on top of the rain or after the rain, so very, very fresh. But even though they are fresh, that animal could well have moved quite a long distance in 15 or 20 minutes, so it could be a way off from here. Okay, time to turn around. Chris from California, good morning and welcome on board. Chris is asking what the hardest animal is to track, and that does depend on the circumstances, Chris, but I would say leopard are the most difficult animals to track because they are often on their own. So that makes finding them difficult because you've only got one set of footprints to go on. Whereas with animals like lion and wild dog, where there's often more members in a pride or a pack, because there's literally just more footprints to see, you've got a higher likelihood of actually being able to follow them down. But in the same breath, each situation will differ. The area you're actually tracking the animal through makes a very big difference, because some areas have high road networks which allow you to check areas that are easy to see tracks. The road is the easiest place to see a track, whereas other areas where road networks are less dense will mean that there's bigger areas of bush that the animal could move through, making it more difficult to track down. Okay, so the last tracks we had were heading towards us about 150 meters in that direction. So I'm just going to check closely here to see if this animal did continue all this way or whether it veered up into the clearings. Doesn't seem to be anything here. It's a wonderful crisp morning here though, and we look forward to finding some animals for you. It may take us some time, but the good news is this cool weather does mean it's more likely that predators that can be sleepy when it's hot are going to be active, which is a good sign for us. So this is exactly where we found the initial tracks. I'm just going to get out to have another closer inspection now that the light has got a bit brighter. Okay. It could well have been a large male leopard, not a lioness. I've been getting a bit rusty after a few weeks in Cape Town. So that is also a possibility. But it would be an exceptionally large leopard if that is the case. What I'm going to do is, rather than following each individual footprint, we've got an idea where the animal is moving. It could veer off at any point, but I'm going to do a big loop around Voyatella Dam and see if we don't come up with anything there. And I believe Mark's on his way to check out the hyena den site, so it'll be interesting to hear from him in the next few minutes whether he has any luck there. But just to keep you updated on his plans. Mark, haven't managed to come up with anything further than the tracks that head from kind of the corner of Yuri's house along that fence towards Final Control. I'm just going to loop around this area. It could well have been a male leopard, not a lioness. Also, just to let you know. Copy. Okay, copy. So, when tracking animals, rain can really benefit in tracking, but in the same breath it can make things difficult, because if an animal had have walked down this road, for example, in the last few hours, its tracks would have been washed away by the rain that we've been having. But what it does mean is, if we do find tracks, we can assume that they're fairly fresh, because we wouldn't be able to see them if they had been rained on for very long. So again, there's positives and negatives to most scenarios out here, and those are just a few regarding the rain and tracking. Oh, good morning, hippopotamus. It really is interesting seeing these animals at the crack of dawn. It's only started getting light about half an hour ago. And what's interesting is that they've spent the whole night out feeding. They could have covered large distances from here searching for grass to feed on. Oh, look at the little baby that's poked its head up there. So with the situation that we're looking at now, that baby would clamber up its mother's body in order to be able to rest its chin on her back and therefore breathe. They don't float, so it will be using its mother in aid, or actually standing on its back legs. Whereas where the two adults are sitting or standing, we can assume that they are standing down there. It's not a very deep dam, and wherever you can see them like this, they will be standing. I wonder how old that baby is. It does look quite small, possibly only a few months old. Okay, well, we shall continue then if the hippo finish with their morning show for us. Apologies, I'm not sure if I've mentioned it's Brian on camera with myself this morning, and Andrew and Mark on the other vehicle with Alex in final control. Brent's got the morning off, and we're looking forward to the coming months working with one another. It really is going to be a great adventure. So we've done a big loop around now, and now we'll be getting more into the area of where that animal was heading. So you can't always follow the tracks directly. You sometimes have to loop around because that's the only way the road network allows. So we've done a big loop now, and now we're getting into an area where we could expect to find some more tracks of that animal that we had earlier. Got a question through from Jane. Good morning, Jane, and welcome. Jane is asking, or mentioned that I said the cooler weather will bring out the predators more. It's not that it'll necessarily bring them out, Jane. Sorry, I may have miscommunicated that. It just means that they'll be more likely to be active. So if we are lucky enough to find them, then we'll be able to view them on the move, which is far greater than watching them sleep. So that's what I'm hoping for, that we're going to, if we are lucky enough to find a predator, that it could well be active. And Jane also mentioned, does it bring out other animals? And the rain certainly will bring out animals like insects. It'll be interesting to see after this. Just going to creep forward a little bit. Such a beautiful bird, and this is by far the best view I've been able to share with any of you. Exactly. So it's called an emerald spotted wood dove, and you can see those emerald windows on its wings. rain, just like Brian mentioned. This is the first time we've actually been able to show you the beautiful emerald coloration, as well as those interesting bars on its back and on the base of its tail. And the reason why we've got lucky here is because it's probably so drenched and saturated from all this rain that it was less likely to want to fly off, which it did eventually, but that really was a good view of the little emerald spotted wood dove. So glad we got to share that with you. And again, just another small advantage, I guess, of the rainfall that we've had. We may find a lot more birds also out drying themselves on branches, less likely to want to fly off. Even after all the rain that we've had, the soil is so thirsty. This mud wallow over here gives you an idea of how little water was actually captured by the wallow due to the fact that the soil is so dry. So another emphasis or indicator showing you how necessary this rain is for the environment at the moment. We've just got a question through from Shauna in Sydney. Good morning and welcome. Shauna's asking again regarding the temperature and how it affects game viewing. In the height of summer, is it more likely that you will only see predators active in the early morning and late evening? And yes, that is a fair assumption to make, but nothing is guaranteed out here, and we would often leave leopard at the end of a morning drive, hot, under a shady tree, fast asleep, and come back in the afternoon and not find them. But it doesn't require them to move very far for us not to be able to find them. Even if they only move a mile or so, or half a mile from where we left them, it can still be very difficult to find them. So they do move, but they will be less inclined to move, and if they do move, they'll probably move short distances. So yes, your assumption is correct, Shauna. So that is something to bear in mind if you are coming out on safari. The chance of viewing predators active during the daylight are considerably slimmer than in the winter, and therefore from a photographic perspective it makes things difficult, because photographing under very low light or in darkness is a lot more tricky than photographing animals in perfect sunshine, which you would be more inclined to have that opportunity in the winter. Just a reminder for those of you who may be new, firstly, welcome on board if it is your first Safari Live experience. And I should have mentioned this earlier, but you can ask questions. As you would have noticed, a few questions have been coming through. And to do that, you would hashtag Safari Live on Twitter, or send an email through to questions@wildearth.tv. So please get your questions through, and Alex in the final control will do his best to get as many questions as he can through to us. And just to keep you updated on Mark's movements, he's temporarily had to divert his course to the hyena den sites. He just needs to go and check on one of our repeaters that help with the broadcast, one of our aerials basically. Just went to go and check one out after all the rain we've had, and had discovered there was one or two little technical issues there that he's managed to resolve, and he will be continuing on to the hyena den site shortly, so should have an update from him there in the next 5 or 10 minutes. Okay, now I'm wondering what our next move should be. I'm hoping we're going to get some form of tracks on this major road that we come out on now. But if not, we'll carry on and possibly head further ahead of where the tracks were heading. Mark also said he had some lion tracks on another road, so it could well have been the same ones that I had seen. They were heading in the direction where Mark found them, so it might be worth us heading over there and trying to establish what is going on. He said the tracks that he had seen had been rained on quite heavily, so not very fresh. But it is always difficult deciding where to drive and what to do, because we do have so many options. And we understandably do feel a little bit of pressure to find you the animals. Sometimes it's a lot easier than others. But it does mean we do have to make some, not difficult decisions, but we do need to try and make as calculated a decision as we can, provided or regarding the information that we have. Quite a few buffalo tracks here. In all likelihood, bachelor herd of buffalo bulls. Does look like they were running around here. Okay, copy, thank you, no problem. This buffalo did appear to have been running around a little bit there, and you always wonder whether they may have been chased by the lion, especially considering we had some tracks nearby. But there was no lion tracks around the buffalo tracks, which lead me to believe that they were possibly just playing around with one another. Happy to have rain. As you would understand, the herbivores benefit directly the most from the rain, but then the predators, on the other hand, have got more powerful and well-fed prey to try and contend with, or try to catch. Towards the end of winter, it really does become considerably easier for the prey animals the predators to actually catch the prey, because they often become quite weak due to lack of nutrition. Go ahead. Okay, copy. So they were heading west. Okay, copy. Good news. For some reason, Mark's vehicle's not picking up any signal at the moment. I'm sure Alex will be able to fix it, but that's why we haven't crossed back to him, just to let you know. But the good news is that Mark has found some more lion tracks in a different area, and he's going to try and establish where exactly they've headed. Not far from us here. I've been hoping to spend time with this family of squirrels that live in this dead tree, because we know they live in there, and this was the first little glimpse we've managed to share with you of this specific family. I wonder if there's one or two more hiding in the cavities within this tree. Anyway, the one we did see has run off. But in the meantime, I'll answer the question. Alex, if you could just go again with who it was from. But somebody's asked a question regarding bush babies, which are very small nocturnal primates. Angie from Iowa, good morning. So Angie from Iowa has asked, where do the bush babies hide out during the day? And they hide within the trees and the foliage, sometimes even within cavities and trees they'll use as little nest sites, or they can often wrap up leaves and create a kind of miniature nest within various trees. So that's where they hide out during the day. I've never actually seen one during the day. I've only ever seen them at night. So they do a very good job at concealing themselves, sadly, during the day, because it would be wonderful to see them. But now that the drives are continuing a little bit, well, at least continuing on with a little bit more darkness towards the end of the drive, so kind of the last 20 minutes we can use the spotlight, and the nocturnal animals such as the bush babies are going to therefore be more likely to be seen, whereas 3 weeks ago we had no need to use the spotlights. So as we go deeper into the winter, we will hopefully be able to share sightings of more nocturnal animals with you. Excuse me. Okay, so another thing that I've just thought about that we could look forward to seeing after heavy rain are some reptiles, and the specific reptile being a snake. So it's not uncommon for snakes to be seen moving after heavy rain, because often their hiding places may have become wet and saturated, and therefore they'll move off and try and find a new spot where they can relax. And we haven't seen too many snake sightings since we've been here. That's not because there's not a lot of snakes, it's simply because they're so wary of our presence that they often shoot off before we get to see them. There's a few tracks here, but I think they're just hyena tracks. But I must double check to make sure. For a brief moment I thought they could have been wild dog tracks, which would have been incredible, but after a second confirmation I am fairly certain they are not wild dogs, that they are hyena. Quite a similar track, but the wild dog's track is smaller than the hyena's track, so obviously a small hyena can be misleading. Go ahead, Mark. You're a maestro. Well done. I shall see you shortly. Confirm he's got signal? Alex, confirm Mark's got signal. Okay folks, well apologies, a little bit of confusion, but we've got some great news and I'm not going to tell you anything about it. We're going to cross over to Mark and let him share the success with you. So we'll catch you a bit later.
Well, after some confusing tracking, managed to find the Nkuhuma lion, and quite amazing, quite fantastic that we did. Found their tracks on Zoe's Road. They went out onto Gowrie Main. They seem to have been walking up and down quite a bit, and a little bit on Philemon's cut line, because there were tracks going first north and south, and then tracks east and west. We're fairly close to the hyena den, but looks like all 8 of them here. Some of them flat in the grasses. Lovely weather for cats. Hopefully they'll be a little bit active. Well, we can only hope. Any stations on Gowrie? Fine, and you, Andrew? Yeah, I got Nkuhumas on Philemon's cut line. Yeah, affirmative. Okay, copied. Yeah, we a little bit further west from PC Kaya. Interestingly, that Scott had had some tracks close to camp, funny enough. We're on Philemon's cut line, not Philemon's dip. So they were obviously walking around quite a bit earlier this morning. In fact, what was easy was the fact that they were walking around after the rain. They must have been sleeping up somewhere. Once the rain stopped, which was just before 6, I'd say, when they started walking around a little bit, and have probably only just arrived here, not long ago. See if we can change positions a little bit. There's probably going to be vehicles coming from the other side. If I want to. It'd be nice if we can position ourselves to not looking at the other vehicle when we're sitting watching them. Hello, little boy. That would be fine, I suppose. Cedric, come in. Yeah, they're on Philemon's cut line, Lalapanzi. I think you might have to take first. I've got Andrew and Johan coming in. Doing what cats do, conserving energy. Although today, with this weather, they wouldn't really burn up too much energy if they were moving around. Hard to tell. He's looking fairly well fed. Hard to tell with the rest of them. They're looking, doesn't look like they've eaten recently though. Some of those females that are lying on their sides are looking rather slim. funny how lions have to lie on top of each other sometimes. They do like contact with each other. There are strong bonds within the pride, but they just have this habit of, when they lie down, they lie on top of each other. I don't see any of the males, the Djuma timbers. So that mating session probably didn't last very long. When we saw them mating, I think it was only about a 2-day event before the males moved on their own, went off their own direction. Fairly good hunting weather, but, well, for one thing, the long wet grasses can hinder them, and the other thing is that in this weather, with this cold wet that the animals are experiencing, I suppose a lot of the animals are in a lot thicker of a bush. They're not out in the open much. I think I must also just try and move again, because the angle that I'm at, I'm just getting in the way of the camera. So let's try a different angle. Sorry, welcome. Oh, Johan, we were expecting you here. Where did you have sticks?
Crossing over there, Philmont's cut line with the Gary Main, with the Djuma symbols up and down. It looks like the last track actually went, was coming up and off.
I thought it was their tracks there.
All the way coming from the open area last night. Came all the way to the drive.
Yeah, sorry, Alex. I was just liaising with Cedric. Who was that question from? The darker the main. Georgian in Illinois. Look at that cub, right? It's quite cold. Got its head on mom. If that is mom, or if it's older sibling. Cold little cat, that one. Georgian in Illinois was asking is it true that the darker the mane, the healthier the lion? Not necessarily. I think to a large extent the darker manes are genetic. And something to do with age too, and of course the area that they're from. I suppose to some extent there could be some correlation, but not to my knowledge. I'll have to look into that. I know that there are areas where the darker mane lions are preferred by the females. Have been shown, I think, in areas like the Serengeti, where it appears that there is a preference for darker mane males when it comes to female preferences. Johan, come in. Oh, you can approach the lot. Andrew, when you get close, I'll move out for you. A skinny little girl. Sorry, Alex, I didn't copy that. Oh, Ray, morning Ray, Colorado. Ray was saying a seen lion rolling in elephant dung, or buffalo dung rather, and making sounds and seeming like he enjoyed it. Is there a reason for that? And well, they do to a large extent try and mask their scent. The common practice, we've seen leopard do it, lion do it. It's something that predators do, try and mask their scent, try and get the scent of their prey all over them so that they can maybe try and get a little closer. The lion, especially in this weather, animals do have a very strong smell, different to when it's very dry. And supposedly helps them get closer to their prey. What? Okay. Okay. Got special greetings from South Africa, from Arathusa to New Zealand, to Shanae and Diane. Just to let you know, Sed's here with us in the sighting, and saying hello to, sending out a hello. You know, one of the things is we've had some very hot temperatures, and a lot of that has been a precursor to, or rather that precedes this weather that we've just had or are having. And for the animals, it's very difficult for them to adjust to the temperature the way we can by just putting on pullovers or jackets or jerseys. For them, it is quite an adjustment to make. As you can see, that cub is feeling very sorry for itself, trying to curl up as tight as it can. And it's not cold, but it would be, I mean, it would be cold and damp for them. They probably haven't dried out much since the rain. I think the older ones can adapt a little bit easier than the youngsters. Good morning to Judy, who's in Texas. Judy's asking about the lioness that was killed last week. We had an incident where some lion was seen feeding on the carcass of a lioness, and we assumed that they killed her and were then eating her. It appears that it was her. We haven't been able to locate the ninth cat from this pride, so we can surmise that it was one of the lionesses from here. I think it was one of the youngsters. Morning, Doug. Doug's in Connecticut. Would like me to elaborate on saying that the wet grass hinders the lion when they hunt. Well, we're at the time of the year, so we're sort of closing out our wet season, end of summer, so the grasses are probably almost at the tallest, so of course it is dense. When the grasses are dry, the leaf blades themselves tend to fold up a little bit, makes it easier to move through the grasses. But now when it is wet, leaf blades of the grasses are as flat and open as they can be, and being wet, it's harder to move through. I mean, it's a known fact that wild dog in particular find it harder to hunt in the height of summer, towards the end of summer, when in the wet season, especially when tall grasses do get wet. Wets the coat, it slows them down. Of course, that would obviously do the same thing to the prey species, but it changes the dynamics a little bit. I lost my kick beetle again. Losing kick beetles. Rick and Susie are asking about this cub, and I'm just looking at the other one on the other side of this female lying down. They're both looking a little bit skinny. As close as they might be as a pride, when it comes to feeding, these two little ones are probably getting the last. Sorry, I was just listening to the radio. They probably get pushed around quite a lot in a kill situation around the carcass. They're dominated by the older cats, and so they obviously maybe don't get as much as the adults do. Of course, the only way we would know that is if we saw them at the start of a kill. Unfortunately, lately we've only seen them at the end of kills when they have been fairly well fed. Obviously, if they've killed something big enough, there's enough to go around. So it could just be that at the moment, looking at a couple of these flat cats, there's a lioness there that's also looking very, very skinny. But it's only sort of the stomach that's hollow, not so much the condition of the cats. There's a little bit of a hip bone showing on that cub that's facing away from us on the far right. Well, conditions can change after a kill. Just said. And then of course looking at her, complete opposite, she's looking very healthy, this old girl. Sometimes parasite load can make their condition deteriorate quite fast, especially on youngsters. An important thing for these cats as a social group is the grooming of each other that takes place to help rid of ticks and parasites. I'm just looking at her. She might have a tick on the top of her left ear, but when she was cleaning earlier, she's looking pretty free of flies and ticks. Interestingly, when a lioness is pregnant, there's something about her blood that changes, that makes her less susceptible to parasites. See, now she could decide to get up and move, and then they'd all have to follow her. I don't know if she's the alpha, but could be that if the alpha decides to go somewhere, that the whole pride will then follow. I'm not too sure if I got the question right, Kathy. Tennessee. Why would lion allow each other to clean each other's faces?
Or do they allow?
Do they allow? Like domestic cats?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what it was. Yes, they do. Actually, it's quite unusual that domestic cats, technically speaking, are, I suppose, originally solitary. They were, if you have to take their lineage back, domestic cats, I suppose, were once solitary wildcats. I'm not saying feral, because they would have come from, maybe the African wildcat would have been maybe one of the origins of domestic cats. And the African wildcat is pretty much a solitary cat. And how domestic cats put together in a situation, in a domestic situation, almost form like a pride and do become quite social. Allo grooming is what we call it, when cats groom each other, or when animals groom each other. And very important in terms of the social bond of the group. It I suppose in a way cements that bond. It strengthens the bonds between individuals, and of course it keeps the pride healthy, because without being groomed by another cat, the parasite load on the back of the ears, the back of the head, places where a cat can't get to them themselves, can hinder the cat, can make the condition deteriorate. You're welcome, Andrew. So it's important from that aspect to keep the pride healthy, and of course to keep their social bonds, or their familial bonds, very strong. Okay, well, what we're going to do is I'm going to sit here, I'm going to stay here for a while and watch the cats and see if anything develops. And in the interim, while we're waiting for these cats to decide to do something, if they're going to do something, we're going to go and see. Scotty's got something for you. We're going to cross over to Scott. Although, hang on, just in a moment. Nice to see some interaction, having spoken about the Allo group. A youngster asking to be groomed. Pretty much what I was saying is, and of course, the key to grooming, or the key to Allo grooming, is clean me, I'll clean you. We see that even with Impala. So we're just going to stay with the lion for a little bit now that we've got a little bit of interaction. Don't want to lose this. Scotty, I think, has found something, but we're just trying to re-establish signal from the jigger. Here's my click beagle. Okay, let's go see we've got a signal from Scott. Let's see what Scott has. Okay, for now we're going to stay with Amanda from Alabama. Do lions and leopards get hairballs like domestic cats? I've never seen it. I have seen them regurgitating things, but when you see lion dung, you see the amount of hair in their dung, there's a certain amount of hair that they swallow. And instead of it coming up as a hairball, They do. It tends to go through the digestive system. I can't say that I've ever noticed it with lion and leopard. Oh, big stretch. Okay, well, while we've got a good signal from Scotty, let's go see what he's got for you. And I'm going to stay with these cats and see what we can do, if they do anything. See you shortly.
Well, the luck continues, and so happy that Mark managed to track down the lions. So well done to Mark, and I hope you enjoyed that sighting with him. Myself and Brian have covered quite a lot of distance since we left you, and eventually we've managed to bump into this herd of elephant. We can only see 4 individuals at the moment, but there could well be more in the area. There's the 4th one's just popped into view now, and before that it was only 3. That's a great shot that Brian's showing you there through the little window in the foliage. And always great to compare the textures out here between the leaves, the skin of the plants and the skin of the elephants. The beautiful contrast in both texture and colors. And they're no doubt happy with the wet, cool weather that's now going to help the vegetation that they feed on to continue to grow, as well as it will keep them cool. This is the 4th member that's just popped out now, the one we can see on the road ahead of us. And because it's a youngster, we can expect some entertainment from it. A lot of the members of this herd do seem quite small. They're all kind of this similar size to the individual that we're looking at now. The handy thing about having a nose that long and that flexible is that you can use it to scratch appendages, which a lot of the mammals out here don't have the privilege of being able to relieve any itches or insects that may be bothering them. Now this one's come quite close to us back here, Brian. Seems to be quite popular at the moment for the elephants to be seeking out small saplings, often growing under the protection of other vegetation, so you do find the elephants having to kind of squeeze themselves into some interesting predicaments to get to these little saplings. There was a youngster amongst them that we will try and show you, but it is very thick here, so I'm not going to guarantee anything, but there is a young calf that's really cute that we will try and show you at some stage, and potentially some more that we're unaware of. It would be considered a very small herd if it's just 3 adults and 1 calf, but not unheard of. Sorry about that little break-up in signal, but some things are simply out of our control. We haven't even moved the vehicle, as you're aware, and obviously a satellite up in space had some form of an issue. But there are so many factors that are out of our control with the broadcast, so apologies for that, but you didn't miss anything. If anything, the elephants just come out perfectly into the open now. Now that this individual's broadside to us, if Brian just focuses a little bit closer in onto her head, you'll notice it's very angular where her forehead meets the top of her head, and you can almost see a little bump there. And that's indicative of a female. They'll have a very right-angled forehead, whereas the males will tend to have a much more rounded forehead that doesn't kind of meet at a 90-degree angle when looking at them broadside. So that can be one of the ways that you sex elephants. Just got a question through from Jenny in Wisconsin. Good morning, Jenny. And Jenny's asking roughly how many pounds of food will an elephant eat on average during a day. And the figure that I've been told is that they need to acquire about 4% of their body weight. So for smaller females like this that we're viewing that are probably around 3 or 4 tons, that would be about 120 to 160 kilograms. So to get pounds, it would basically double that mark. So anywhere from about 200 to 300 pounds of vegetation a day. It's a very big salad that they need to eat every day. And the reason why they do need to feed on so much is because their digestive system is quite poor, Jenny. So food comes out almost the way that it went in, very partially digested. And that is why they have adapted and evolved with these massive ears that help keep them cool during the heat of the day. And you'll often find elephant active when other animals may be resting. So they do need to spend a lot of time feeding, and that's great for us because when we find elephants, they 90% of the time always doing something and performing for us. So a great animal to view, not only because of its size and beauty, but simply because they're very often active. There's a much bigger cow that I've just seen for the first time now, so evidently more members of this herd than we initially saw, and they do appear to be coming up to us. Let's see what she does now. Hello. We've got no food for you, sadly. Okay.
Not happening.
No, wrong answer. Interestingly, I've noticed that she's been feeding on the same tree that she just touched there with her trunk. It's called the zebra wood, which is a very hard wood. But I've now noticed that she has been feeding on the leaves of that tree. That's a much bigger cow. They look really beautiful with the sheen or glisten from all the moisture from the rain falling on them. And let's see what this lady thinks of us. She does seem very relaxed, but we do have to be cautious of what mood they may be in. Brian just read my mind, because I was just going to start talking about the toenails, and he then zoomed in on them, so congratulations on your mind-reading abilities there, Brian. An interesting angle, and not always a shot that we get to show you. And isn't that interesting? You can see the 4 toenails, well, at least 3 in this shot, but there will be 4 little toenails there. They don't ever leave any sign of them having a toenail on their tracks in the sand, so it's not something you would expect to see on their tracks. Hello. Are we in your way? Well, this is a great way to spend the morning, and so happy that not only... Oh, look at the youngsters behind there now. Not only do we have Mark with the lion, and I think he's still with them in the hope that they may get active, or who knows, something may stumble across them. But he's there with the lion, and Alex has just confirmed for me that Mark is still with the lions, and we're out here with this, what's turning out to be a really great breeding herd of elephants. And Alex has just said that the lions are still sleeping, so you're not missing out on anything. And that is the beauty of having 2 vehicles, is that now Mark can afford to spend time there and wait for them to hopefully do something, because there is a chance that they will get up and do something, or like I say, something could stumble upon them while we enjoy this elephant sighting. And we really have got lucky, because it's very thick around us. But the elephants have fortunately decided to come and feed around us, making our life very easy and making for some great shots to share with you. I hope you could hear that low rumbling. It's a wonderful form of audio that the elephants make, and it's one that I hope you managed to hear, because it really is a prehistoric sound that you'd almost expect to come from a dinosaur. Rick and Susie in Hawaii, good morning, and welcome back, I guess. Rick and Susie sent through lots of questions to us, and good to be answering another question from you guys. It's been a few weeks since I've been gone, and Rick and Susie have asked whether, if at any stage bees or beehives will attack elephants, and it's a very good question. I haven't heard of it happening before, but that's not to say it hasn't happened. But what I could assume is that because the elephant's skin is so thick, I don't think the bees would actually, their stings would actually affect the elephants in any way. What would potentially bother the elephants is if a swarm of bees is buzzing around them, that noise may bother them. So, good question, Rick and Susie. Sadly, that's the best I've got for you. But one worth asking Mark. Maybe he knows of some stories with bees, swarms of bees attacking elephants. I'm not entirely sure though if he would have, but it would be one worth asking Mark. It's at a later stage. And Alex has just asked Mark that now. So Mark does have an interesting answer for you regarding the beehives, and I'll let him answer that, Rick and Susie, a little bit later when we cut back to him. But Alex, in the final control, did ask Mark that, so he will let you know his information, which is a really interesting piece of information. I'm going to attempt to turn around quickly. Oh, one car got a bit of a fright there, but that from me. So I'm just going to maybe flip them over. Welcome back, everyone. I believe you've had some time with elephants with Scott. Welcome back, and apologies for that little break in signal and also for the audio issues on Mark's vehicle. Mark and Andrew are busy sorting that out, and we've managed to reposition and now continue watching this breeding herd. They're all really relaxed with us, which is great. But sadly, I think we'll only be able to enjoy the sighting for a few more minutes, because as you can see, the vegetation is very thick, and as soon as they veer off the road, it wouldn't make sense to follow them through this thick stuff. It's great watching the youngsters like we have in view now, because it really gives an idea of how difficult it is to get to grips with that trunk of theirs, and it takes them a few years to master the art. It's got hundreds of thousands of different muscle fascicles, and that's what allows them to be able to twist and contort it in so many different directions. But all those individual muscles require control, and to learn how to control them certainly isn't easy for the youngsters. We're just going to try and creep forward a little bit. Alex, apologies if the signal breaks, but we do need to try and just...
Welcome back, folks. Let's just sort out our audio issue here on the vehicle. Don't know what happened. This is the youngster that had that sort of growth on her elbow. Looks like both elbows actually, but it looks like it's a lot smaller than it was, if I'm not mistaken, unless the other cub was, unless she's starting to get the same thing growing on her elbows. I think it is. Because this other cub lying down looks like she's the one that had the bigger growth on its elbow. I don't know what it could be. Yeah, I think that's the one that's got the big lump on her elbow. While we're here, I need to show you something that's on my dashboard. I know it's not quite the subject of cats. Except I touched it now, so she's gone. She's withdrawn. I have to wait until it decides to. This is a click beetle, a female click beetle. You see, this is my finger, about as long as my baby finger. Very interesting beetle. Has a way of creating like a pneumatic click, and uses.
Just cutting to this quick while.
Okay, sorry. She was not quite sneezing. A couple of these cats are eating some of these long grasses, I suppose, for their stomachs.
Coming back to your beetle.
Okay. Yep. Anyways, they have an incredible sort of little hinge where the head meets the thorax, or rather the thorax and the abdomen, and they use that to click, helps them click over. But it also has a defense mechanism, so that if something were to grab the beetle, you can see the click. You can hear it as well. And I'm going to find a tree for this beetle. Anyways, let's back to cats, and just to follow on from a question that Scott had about elephants and bees. Hang on. Just got... Wild dog. Okay, that's interesting. Getting a bit of a word in from Arathusa that the wild dog Went through there this morning, waiting to hear if there's any update on that. Rick and Susie in Hawaii were asking if elephants ever disturb bees when they're feeding on trees. They do, Rick and Susie. I've been with, on a number of occasions, I've been with elephants when beehives have been disturbed, and the pandemonium that ensues. We can't see the dogs. They've gone south into Arathusa Private. We're only allowed on Arathusa Safari. But that's good news, because they might come around this way at some point. But elephants don't like bees. Elephants are very wary of bees. In fact, because of the reaction that elephants have to bees, there are new methods in trying to keep elephants out of farmland, out of croplands in parts of East Africa. And one of the methods that they're using is to keep beehives around the edges of crops to deter elephants, and it actually works. It's a good way to minimize that conflict, that human-animal conflict that one experiences with burgeoning human populations expanding into wildlife areas, and just that constant animosity between subsistence farmers and rural people and the wild animals that come into their lives, either predators that eat their stock, their livestock, or big herbivores that destroy their crops. They've moved just slightly from where they were, off the road now onto this little dense patch of grasses under these bush willows. And as they were moving through here, we noticed there was a little termite mound hidden, very well hidden under a potato bush, and a dwarf mongoose sitting in there watching the cats, not making a sound, just watching them. Probably quite pleased with itself that the cats couldn't see it. Copy, thanks Andrew. Andrew, is anything else on safari other than those Madach that were there? Did Roy say there was anything else on safari in Dow? Okay, copied. Nothing else? Yeah, must be. Andrew, come in. Did you find something on Spalm Road? Okay, copy, thanks. Scott, come in. Sorry folks, got a lot of radio work going on here. Some buffalo up the road towards Treehouse to turn off. Yeah, I just want to know what the lock is of those in Dlorv. Okay, copied. If anyone's interested, there was also some in Dlorv, just west of Quarry Pan. Oh, these are cats that are not planning on doing much unless something walks by. Joanne. Hello, Joanne in Arizona. Bird that is calling. Okay, let me see if I can. I'm not sure which one you're referring to, but let's see if we can hear any of them. I'll see if we can. We've got the chagra. There is quite a number of chagras. I can hear a southern black tit. The chagra is that's the brown crowned chagra. No, the black crowned chagra. Chagra is a type of shrike, but it's a very secretive shrike. Not too sure. Karina in Finland. I'm trying to wrap my head around. Are these cats dependent on the Djuma timber males? When it comes to hunting, are they dependent on the males when it comes to hunting, or not? Not really. I think they could probably bring down a buffalo on their own. I suppose if they were to go for giraffe or something, or maybe with big buffalo bulls. But if I'm not mistaken, they managed to bring down a buffalo on their own. Sometimes you'll find lionesses are dependent on the male or males when they're bringing down things like buffalo or giraffe. But generally, hunting, they can't be dependent on the males because the males aren't with them all the time. Especially if they're hunting wildebeest or zebra or kudu or anything of that size or smaller, they definitely don't need the males. In fact, if anything, they don't really want the male company because it's likely that the males will dominate the carcass or even steal the carcass and prevent them from feeding. It's not a hard and fast rule that happens. Some males allow the rest of the pride to feed with them and some males don't. And some males on some days allow them and other days don't. It's not a really fixed thing about how that really works. But I've very often, with many different prides, I've seen where the lionesses will kill something and then they'll leave the males feeding on it and then move off and go and hunt for themselves and their cubs. Mark, here go. Yeah, affirmative, is that right? Yeah, you're welcome, bud. I'm not too sure how much there is out there. We were driving around earlier. It wasn't very much at all, but the weather has changed. It's drying up. It's starting to warm up just a little bit, and some of the cloud looking like it might be lightening up a bit. Maybe some sun coming out, and of course that means that most likely the cats are going to stay pretty flat for most of the day, and which will be good, because that means that we'll see them this afternoon. We won't have to look too hard. Of course, if the weather doesn't change, if the weather gets a little bit worse, they could always move to a place where we're not likely to find them again. It'd be pretty hard to track at the moment as the ground starts drying up and hardening. Need to find a tree for the speakers.
My pillow is falling off the side here.
Huh?
My pillow is falling off the side here.
Really?
Yeah.
You can't stretch over.
No.
Huh?
It's too far. Let me try again.
Want me to hold your feet? Sorry, Andrew has to try and retrieve something. Alright. Oh, you got it. Because if the cats got it, they would have had fun with it. But I'd still like to stay here. We weren't seeing much, and as long as we've got cats and there's a chance that something might happen, I'd like to stay here. Evidently some buffalo not too far west of here, and I suppose they won't need to go down to the dam, or they won't be heading down towards tree houses they'd normally do at this time of the day, because it would be starting to get warm. So they might move around, and it might get interesting if these cats hear something or see something moving about. Fortunately, the way they sleep, they remain pretty well hidden until an animal might just be a little bit too close. It'll be interesting to see. What's most interesting is how they can go from this sleeping flat cat posture or status that they are now into up and running in the blink. In fact, it is the blink of an eye. Morning, Sue. Question coming from Canada, in Alberta in Canada. Question about the dark markings behind the ears of the lion. Sue wants to know, are they all the same, or can they be used to identify individual cats? Very much so. I mean, they are different. They do appear to be the same, but you have to remember that every cat is different, and even though it might be a very subtle difference, they are they're not going to be the same. But the other thing about the ears is, maybe more so than trying to identify from the markings of the ears, is actually using the tears and nicks and ticks. Sometimes ticks change over time, but the scratches and the tears and the bites that you find in their ears stay the same throughout their lives, if not they get a little more tatty as they age. And so those nicks and tears in the ears can be very distinctive markers. If we have to, can't really see with this cub, with the youngster, but if we were to look at, maybe if I can move, or when they sit up, especially the females, the older females, because they've had far more interactions or claws and teeth and claws tearing their ears, or fighting over carcasses, or fighting with other cats, and you'll be able to see some of the different markings, or rather nicks out of the ear. So that is a very important identifier when it comes to cats, especially because a lion do all look alike, and although there are very specific things that we look at when we're trying to identify individual cats, when we're keeping ID cards or ID features of the cats, the ears become very important. And so when you are trying to record different cats, you draw the outline of a cat's face, and you will be able to mark in where the nicks are on the ears. See if we can maybe pick up anything on his ears. He's getting a bit of sunshine coming out, which is going to get some of them seeking shade. If the sun comes out, we can be pretty sure they're not going to move much during the day. How are you? Good.
The rest of the pride is carnivores is vegetarian.
Can a lion get parvovirus? That's a very good question. I'm not sure if parvo is exclusive to canines. I'm not too clued up on viruses and diseases, but that's something I'll have to look into. One thing that cats, the lion, are susceptible to here, especially in Kruger, is TB and feline HIV is another one. But parvo, I'm not sure. Parvo is deadly in domestic dogs. And I would imagine that if there was a cross-species contamination, I would imagine that there would be a tighter control of domestic dogs coming into wildlife areas for that very reason. So I would imagine that maybe there isn't cross-species contamination, or if that's the right word, cross interspecific infection. Now, why don't you go and sleep in the tallest grass you can find? I know that there's been some accidents even in trying to prevent domestic diseases from entering populations of wild predators, wild dog in particular. And I think it was parvo, if I'm not mistaken, up in Kenya, where some researchers thought that they could immunize the pack of wild dog. I think it was parvo, I'm not too sure. There was some canine disease that is limited to the genus Canis only, and since wild dog are not the genus Canis, then the vaccine didn't work for them, and if anything, it killed off some of the dogs. Like, one has to be very, very careful about introducing the diseases of domestic animals into wild populations, and funny enough, vice versa. You know, most of the buffalo, in fact all the buffalo in Kruger, are carriers of things like bovine TB and foot and mouth, hoof and mouth, that could be devastating to the farming and farming community if domestic cattle were to come into contact with buffalo.
30 seconds. Was that an elephant that dented their feet?
Why? I think maybe we should move along and find something else for the last hour of drive,
I think.
and maybe come past here again a little bit later to see if they might still be here. I don't think they're going to be going very far, and I'm tempted to stay just in case something happens. There are some buffalo not far from here, and of course there could always be kudu or zebra or something walking by that will change the status quo and get them up and hunting in no time. But some of me also is tempted to go and find some other animals, although we'll see what Scott can find. Speaking of buffalo, let's go and see what Scott's got for you. And I'm going to stay here just in case something happens. So let's go see something else for a while. Hand you over to Scott.
Well, welcome back. And we've stumbled upon an interesting scenario here, because there's a very young calf in amongst what looks to be just 3 bulls, buffalo bulls that we've seen now, and this calf is abnormally young to be hanging out with the older men, so possibly it got separated from its herd. It's hard to tell, but we're not at all far from the lions, and I think I can actually hear Mark's vehicle that's just started up. So potentially good prospects that these lions may get wind of the buffalo and pursue them. I'm not entirely sure exactly where the lions were, but their tracks actually did head down this very road towards where Mark was viewing them. The oxpeckers are having a great time. You can hear them chattering away there, flying from buffalo to buffalo. And there appear to be a few bulls coming out into the open towards us, so we should have some great shots if we just be patient for a moment or two. That's the young calf, and I remember before I left a few weeks ago, there was, oh, Brian spotted a starling there. And there was, as I was saying a few weeks ago, a young calf that was also hanging around with some older bulls, so it could very well be the same one, and obviously the calf is no longer dependent on milk, so as long as it has the safety and security of these bulls, it will continue existing with no problems. They really do know how to display their thoughts of us from time to time, shaking their heads and delivering some quite mean death stares. when they desire. Oh, that's why the oxpeckers are so excited. This individual that Brian's going to pan across to now, it's got a big wound on its shoulder. It's just out of view from this angle. It's just on the kind of right-hand side of its spine. And that's what the oxpeckers are so excited about, because an open wound allows them to feed directly on blood without having to acquire it via an ectoparasite. So as much as they do, I'm going to try and reverse quickly, as much as they do help the buffalo in keeping ticks off them, they do keep it open. And I don't know if we're going to be able to pull this off. Oh, you can see that big tree there, so luckily we didn't crash into it. But what is interesting now that we're very close is that there's some young oxpeckers. Oh no, they just flew off. I've given Brian a tricky angle here, so he just has to realign the camera quickly. But as that buffalo walks away, oh, look at that turn of pace. That really was something to see. And I think it's because they got the scent of the lions that walked down this road earlier. And that is what caused them to run off in such haste. As I said, we did see the tracks of the lion heading up this road towards where Mark found them this morning. And I think just that incredibly strong sense of smell that a lot of the animals have out here alerted to them to the fact that lion are there. But it sounds like Mark is ready to see what's going on with Mark. So over to Mark and we'll catch up with you a little bit later.
Well, just as I was saying just a few minutes ago, that it can go from fast asleep to very alert and very active, and they've seen something, so there's definitely something going on. Don't know what they've seen, but they've heard something or seen something, and suddenly from sleepy dozy lions we've got some very hungry cats eagerly looking out for something that might be moving in the bush somewhere just southwest of us. And here we have it, an entire pride on our bumper. I don't know how to take a picture of this. Hello girls and boys, mostly girls. Now you can see the ears nicely, especially the backs of the ears. You can see different markings, different nicks and tears. I can also hear, sounds like a bird alarming.
Welcome back. I'm just going to get a quick update from Mark as to where exactly he is. Mark, where exactly on Philemon's cut line are you?
And so Scotty is coming this way. Scotty, just check if there's anything on your right as you come down here. They've been looking at something up that way. Okay, Scott's saying they might have heard the buffalo running through the bush. But those buffalo that we heard about just west of us must have maybe picked up their scent or picked up something about them. So they, well, stretch and lie down again. False alarm, I guess. Okay, copy. Now maybe it was they heard the buff. So much for sunshine coming out. It's actually getting darker again. Heavier cloud moving over. I suppose that's just the way the weather is going to be at the moment. It's going to be waves of cloud and rain. As long as it stays away in the rain for another hour or so. Yeah. Oh, now they're getting interested in Scotty moving around. Scott's approaching. We're going to have two vehicles here. What was interesting, Cedric was saying that he'd been tracking to the Styx lionesses with the two Matemba males. And then those tracks seem to have he seemed to have lost those tracks, and then found I found these cats. But these cats, I found these cats by following the same tracks he was on. But there were tracks up there on Gowrie Main of males. So it is a bit confusing. Unless, what's that, impala?
Yep.
Impala way behind us, probably looking at these cats already. Hasn't alarmed or anything yet. Big impala ram. I don't think the cats will be much interested in that, especially because he's already seeing them. He's got to be well over 100 yards away. Out with your face, girl. So, back to flat cats, almost. Where? There.
It's okay.
But the other thing,
Bagworm, yeah.
the bagworm, just above this lion's head, but of course a lot closer to us. A very interesting thing in this acacia next to me. I can't go forward much, but that white thing that you can see, I'll try and get a better picture of it shortly. But interestingly, this is the caterpillar known as the bagworm caterpillar, who has cut a number of these white acacia thorns and sewn them together to form like a tube, and the caterpillar lives inside that tube. Interestingly enough, it is the larva of a moth, and the male becomes a moth after he's finished chewing on leaves and things. He flies around, tries to find a female. The female, on the other hand, doesn't become a moth. She stays within the tube, that protective tube. She lays eggs and dies, and then that bag, as it were, becomes protection for the eggs until the young caterpillars hatch. The young caterpillars, being very, very small, will probably use bits of grass. Sometimes you get bagworms that just use little grains of sand, and they sew them all together. But as adult, they'll sew the thorns for this species at any rate. There's some thorn trees that I've seen that have infestations of bagworms, that you have these little bags of acacia thorns that have been sewn together hanging off of the trees like Christmas decorations. Nature's really wonderful. All sorts of interesting little tidbits here and there when we finally
Welcome back, and apologies for the break in signal from Mark. I think he'll just need to reposition. He seems to be in a bit of a funny spot there with regards to broadcasting signals, so I'm sure he'll just reposition, and Alex will let me know as soon as I've got a good feed from him. Myself and Brian have just decided to head into an area that we haven't explored yet this morning in the hope that we find something interesting. Somebody has driven down this road already this morning, which doesn't bother me because you could drive up and down the same road for the whole 3-hour game drive and see different things on every journey backwards and forwards. So it's not a concern, just thought that I would let you know that another vehicle has driven down here a little bit earlier. Myself and Brian are longing to see a leopard, so we would ideally simply drive around a corner and find a leopard sleeping in a tree. Brian went so far as to say that he would like the leopard to have a duiker kill, not any killer, specifically a duiker kill. I'm not sure why Brian had it in for the duiker this morning, but either way, that's what Brian wants to see. But even if we don't come across a leopard up a tree with a hiker kill, it would be so useful to just find some tracks of a leopard. That way we would know that there's a leopard moving in any certain area. And anyway, enough about me talking about leopard tracks, some signal. So back to Mark, we'll catch up with you a little bit later.
How do you count? So A little bit of excitement over now. Going back to lie down. I don't know what happened to Scott. He was here a minute ago. We wait again. You know, this is something you can do all day. Sitting with Lion. Being patient, and then suddenly a couple of minutes of intense action. So it is worth sitting and waiting and seeing if anything transpires, anything pops up out of the woodwork. Where did you get to, Scott? Okay, copied. I think one of the guys was there. Didn't see anything earlier, but things can change. Are you going past the old den site on Zoe's? Move forward a little. One. Are you close there? I'll just find out, but I don't think there's anyone there. Stand by. Is there any station with some PC Kaya on Philemon's Dip? It sounds like there's no one there. Thanks, Johan. Patient as a cat. Any chance we can see that butterfly? That little yellow one on the red flower. The last of the red zinnias flowering. Just there. A little bit far away. So I think the butterfly just noticed it was on camera. And another zinnia. They're a little bit far, but and covered with too many obstacles in the way, too much grass. But while we're waiting for something to change, okay, thanks. Cedric was saying that he was following the two Styx lionesses and the two Matembas up towards Philemon's cut line, and then of course the Nkuhumas were here, so he was quite surprised that it was the Nkuhumas. So it could be that the tracks that you saw could be from those two Styx up there near Quarantine. Now, rather confusing with lion tracks from Philemon's cut line going all the way down to Rebecca's Road junction with Gary Main. So somewhere there are other cats. Styx lionesses. So far nobody's picked up anything. Scott's saying that there were tracks around Treehouse Dam. He's also just been to the hyena den just to check, because see, there he goes. Maybe he's going to follow up on some other lion tracks that are around. But saying that there are lion tracks at the hyena den, whether that has any bearing on the fact that there's nothing at the den. One of the vehicles that was here with the lion this morning from one of the other private camps, when he left here he went to the hyena den, said there was nothing happening there earlier. Scott's just been in there now, but saying interestingly, I'm not sure which lion. It'd be interesting to find out which lion, although it's irrelevant really. The fact is that there seemed to have been lion going through the den area. Whether that has, I don't know whether that has any bearing. I think if anything, the hyena would keep their cubs very deep in the burrow, very deep in the den. If the lion were around, adults might run off. The Jacobin cuckoo calling behind us. Interestingly, yesterday I heard, was it yesterday or the day before, purple-crested Tarako in Vuyatela Lodge. I could hear it from my bedroom. Now the second time since being back here at Djuma this round of drives that I've heard purple-crested Tarako. I can't recall, in all the years of being here on Djuma before, can't recall ever having purple-crested Tarakos around Gowrie Dam or Djuma. I think with him sitting up like that, him move, we might get a nice portrait of him looking around. Now that there's not much movement anymore again. I don't think so, from that angle. This is the little termite mound next to me with the dwarf mongoose in here, but they've gone underground. Good. No obstruction, or hardly. Maybe one or two blades of grass, which I'm not really going to move right now. Maybe if he wasn't there. This is a young male lion that is going to have a very, very hard time in this part of the world. He's reaching an age where soon he's going to have to, I suppose in a way, fend for himself. He's going to have to leave the pride, he's going to have to leave the territory, he's going to have to go off and become nomadic for a while, for a good couple of years. And he's going to have to almost run a gauntlet of big male lions to get out of here. He's not going to be able to go much further south or west. He could maybe move up into Manyaleti if he could get past the Salatis and any other coalitions that might be up there. Seems to be, with the coalitions of males that we've been having in this area for the last few years, that it would be very difficult for a lone male to make it in this world, because there's no ways that one lion can defend himself, or I suppose in the same sense, not going to be easy for him to take over a territory if territories are mostly coveted by coalitions of males. One of the reasons why it kind of works better for males to be in coalitions, because they are a stronger force to be reckoned with, and they can hold a territory longer and better than a single individual. George in Florida wants to know if there's been any word on the Birmingham males. Speaking of coalitions, not that I've heard. Nothing's come over the radio. In fact, I haven't heard of any tracks for a while now. Since I think it was since they killed the wildebeest. Since this pride killed the wildebeest over there on quarantine, there was talk that the Birmingham males had been in the area and that the Matimbas had chased them off. But that was all we heard. It was I suppose, well, not really rumour, but it was. I know that it was mentioned, but I didn't find any proof myself. But also, I haven't heard anything from Arathusa where the Birminghams do spend time. So I'm sure they're also somewhere off of Arathusa. That news is not filtering down to us. Wonder if they maybe not back up in Manyaleti. Head on ahead. hard work being a lion in Africa, really is. It's even harder work watching lion in Africa. It is a huge paw. Well, there's some good news coming in from Pat, was saying that the Birmingham males were seen in Koro 2 days ago, which is way over in the east, which is why we haven't heard anything here, or on Arathusa, I suppose. That's interesting. I didn't know that they went that far east. Thanks, Pat. Sherry wants to know, Sherry's in Ohio, wants to know how long they can go without food. Well, if they had eaten, let's say for example they had a buffalo and they filled up with the buffalo, they could probably last a bit more than a week after being very, very full. Maybe push it a little bit longer than a week, but I think by a week they're going to start being very, very hungry. fourth mongoose coming out again. There's actually quite a few now. Just seeing one disappear down a hole. There is one sitting underneath this bush watching the lion. As long as they don't alarm, as long as they don't draw attention to themselves, they can sit there in that little bit of cover, and the lion don't even know that they're there. I think if these little cubs knew that there were mongoose here, they might start poking around in the bushes. But as long as the mongoose keep quiet. So that is the little one with a big growth on her elbow. It looks like the other child is also starting to get that problem. Wondering what it could be. If anyone, Cindy's a vet tech. Cindy might know. Anybody else in the veterinary field can shed light onto the growth that seemed to be on these two cubs. I've got a similar thing on my elbow. I can't remember what my doctor said about it. It's like a fatty deposit. It's like a... I can't remember what he said. It's not... It doesn't hinder me. It doesn't... I suppose only when I'm resting my elbow on something it feels awkward. It's not as big, I suppose, in relation to that cub's. It's not, perhaps not as big as hers, but... So I kind of empathize in a way. There's no pain or anything. Mild discomfort occasionally. But I don't know if what's afflicting me is the same thing that is doing it to the cubs. Okay. I had a message earlier and we were trying to work it out what it was, because somebody sent a message to say that Spock is no longer with us. I thought maybe somebody had a cat or a dog named Spock, but evidently Leonard Nimoy, well, whenever you are techies, Trekkies, not techies, Trekkies. And yes, I suppose a little bit of an obscure thing to talk about, sitting with lion in Africa. Had some parrots arriving. I don't know if you heard that very high-pitched squeak. There's a maroo tree down below us. Can't see any of them, but it sounds like some parrots have come into that tree. Be nice to sit here for the rest of the day, but we're going to go home shortly. coming towards the end of drive, and finally managed to get signal back from Jigger, so I'm going to hand you over to Scott for the rest of the drive, or for the last few minutes. And I just want to thank you for joining us. Thanks for your patience as well with the line, and hope that you're going to join us again. So, sorry, we lost Scott. We're going to go and say goodbye to Scott. I'm going to say goodbye to you. And strange, we don't know, we seem to be having a bit of trouble with the signal from Jigger. So we'll sit with them for the last few minutes. I thought we would go and see what Scott was up to for him to say goodbye. He will be on Wendy this afternoon, and Brent will be in Jigger, and I'll be cooking dinner, I suppose. And I'll see you again tomorrow morning, first thing tomorrow morning, for our morning drive. Pity I'm not going to be out this afternoon, but of course really great that we've got a good team going now. We've got a nice rotation going, and gives us at least a little bit of a break every now and then. So you'll be seeing a lot of all three of us. We're working out quite a nice rota of how we're going to work, and Brian and Andrew unfortunately are stuck on camera every drive. Once you're lucky, you get to see the lion all the time. Well, hopefully we'll get here this afternoon and catch up with what these cats get up to, if they haven't moved at all. And I think with the crew back and full strength, I think we can look forward to the fireside chat on Sunday. I think that's going to be most likely, which will be a good idea. We haven't had one for a while. Is that mongoose? I wouldn't go foraging just yet. Looks like the whole colony is starting to wake up. I'm seeing at least 5 or 6 different individuals now. And they're going to have to sneak off somewhere to go off. You can get their quota of insects and larvae and food for the day. Wonderful that we could have sat with the lion as long as we did, and hopefully we will get to spend more time with them. We have to try and capitalize on our time with them, because sometimes they move off of the property and we can go for days without finding lion. So it's always good, especially with 2 vehicles, that we can have one vehicle looking for other things while one of us sits with the lion, and hopefully we'll pick them up again this afternoon. Scott and Brent will be out, and that'll be from 4 o'clock Central African time. And until then, I'm going to say goodbye. Thanks for joining us this morning. It's been great, and thanks for all the questions. Lovely to have that interaction with all of you out there. From Andrew behind camera, myself, Mark, and of course on behalf of Scott and Brian on the other vehicle, and Alex in final control. Bye everybody, love you lots, see you later.